Hi, I'm Giovanni Giuliano. I work at Enea and today I'm going to discuss what makes tomatoes colorful. Light, like sound, is a vibration characterized by a wavelength, which is the distance between two subsequent peaks. In sound, a short wavelength results in a high tone, like that of a violin. A long wavelength results in a low tone, like that of a contrabass. In light, short wavelengths result in violet color, long ones in red. This is what we call the visible spectrum. Wavelengths shorter than 400 nanometers form ultraviolet light, those longer than 665 infrared light. Our eyes cannot see them. Sunlight is white because it contains all the different wavelengths. Color is generated when one or more wavelengths are transmitted poorly or in different directions. This can occur through two different mechanisms: refraction, which occurs when sunlight enters the atmosphere or hits a water droplet. Refraction generates the beautiful colors of a sunset or a rainbow. A second mechanism is absorption. A given material can absorb some wavelengths better than others and reflect the remaining ones. This is the case of chlorophyll, which absorbs the blue and red wavelengths, resulting in its green color. There are two fundamental types of coloration in living organisms. The first one is structural coloration. This is based on the differential refraction of light by thin films present on the surface of bird feathers, insect wings, or some plant fruits. You can recognize structural coloration because it's usually iridescent. The second type of pigmentation is pigmentation. This is based on the presence of chemical molecules known as pigments, which are able to absorb differentially the different wavelengths of white light. The color of a pigment depends on two factors. The most important one is the number of alternated double bonds in the molecule. Let's make an example with the main carotenes found in the tomato fruit. Phyton has 3 alternated double bonds and absorbs around 285 nanometers in the ultraviolet region. Therefore, it's colorless. Its function in the fruit is unknown, but it possibly acts as a sunscreen protecting the tomato from ultraviolet light. Lycopene instead has 11 alternated double bonds and it absorbs in the blue. As a consequence, it has a bright red color. A third major carotene, beta-carotene, has 11 double bonds like lycopene, but the shape of the molecule is slightly different. As a consequence, beta-carotene is orange. Tomatoes can have hundreds of different color hues, from totally green to almost black. The pigments that compose this color palette belong to 3 different classes: chlorophyll, which is green; carotenoids like lycopene and beta-carotene, which are orange and red; and flavonoids like naringenin and anthocyanins, which are respectively yellow and purple. Different combinations of these pigments result in different colored tomatoes. Let's start with the regular red tomato. It contains carotenoids, 95% lycopene and 5% beta-carotene, as well as naringenin. The loss of naringenin gives rise to pink tomatoes, which are particularly appreciated in Japan. Usually, chlorophyll is present only in unripe tomatoes, but in some types it remains also during late ripening, resulting in a brown color, like the Kumato variety represented here. Sometimes chlorophyll remains in the apical part of the tomato, resulting in the so-called green shoulder. The green shoulder sustains photosynthesis in the ripe fruit, resulting in higher sugar content. Other mutant tomatoes which have been introduced recently in the market are the orange ones, in which beta-carotene increases up to 50% or more, and the yellow ones, in which no carotenoids are made and the yellow color is due mainly to naringenin. Finally, black tomatoes owe their color to the accumulation of anthocyanins in the peel. This is due to the presence of two mutant genes which have been introduced from wild tomato species. The pigments of tomato are not only beautiful to see, they are also healthy. Let's start with lycopene. Several epidemiological studies have established that a high lycopene intake protects adult men from prostate cancer. Beta-carotene is even more important. In our body, it is transformed into vitamin A, which is essential for normal development, as well as into retinol, which is essential for vision. These two pigments are heat stable and are best absorbed by our intestine in the presence of oil. So the best way to get a good dose of these carotenoids is to make a tomato sauce or, if you like raw tomatoes, use oil as a condiment. Finally, flavonoids are well known for their antioxidant properties, which help them prevent several types of cancers like breast cancer, lung, pancreas, prostate, and colon cancer. Carotenoids not only contribute to tomato color, but indirectly also to aroma. As you have heard from Mathilde previously, volatile aromas are important for tomato flavor. Several of these aromatic substances are derived from the three main tomato carotenoids, lycopene, phytoin, and beta-carotene. A consequence of this is that tomatoes with different colors often have also different flavors. Some people think that red color in tomatoes is man-made. This is a common mistake. The tomato clade contains 13 different species, of which 9 have green fruits and 4, including the cultivated tomato and its wild ancestor, have orange or red colored ones. Colored fruits appeared in wild species about 2 million years ago, much earlier than domestication. To give you an idea of the time scale, the last common ancestor between tomato and potato lived about 7 million years ago, and dinosaurs went extinct about 60 million years ago. Living organisms use colors as signals. For instance, some insects are brightly colored as a defense. They signal to potential predators that they contain toxic substances. Birds use their bright colored feathers to attract sexual partners. In many birds, the color of the feathers depends on the diet. Therefore, bright colors are a signal that the bird has eaten well and is ready to reproduce. Finally, many plants use bright fruit colors to attract animals for dispersal of their seeds. This is the case for tomato, as we will see in a couple of slides. Not all animals, however, have a good color discrimination. Birds and some reptiles have by far the best discrimination with 3 or 4 visual pigments. Most mammals instead have only 2 different visual pigments, with the exception of primates that have 3. Nocturnal birds and nocturnal mammals are mostly colorblind. This is not surprising. Thus, it is not surprising that many fruit-eating species belong to birds, reptiles, and primates, which are able to better recognize different fruit colors. In this last slide, I'd like to tell you the story of an interesting mutualistic interaction between a plant and an animal. The Galapagos Islands, visited by Charles Darwin in his travels, host 2 wild tomato species with orange fruits rich in beta-carotene, Solanum chismaniae and Solanum galapagense. These species have very small seeds with a thick seed coat which, when planted, do not germinate. Thus, for many years, it was a mystery how these species managed to reproduce. Until a professor from UC Davis, Charles Rick, discovered in one of his trips that the Galapagos giant turtle is very fond of the orange fruits of these 2 species. and moreover, that the seeds, after passing through the digestive tract of the animal, germinated readily. This is a very good example of a mutualistic interaction between a plant species and an animal. In this case, the orange color of the fruits attracts the animal, and the presence of beta-carotene helps it maintain a good vitamin A status. On the other hand, the animal, by processing the seeds through its digestive tract, ensures their germination and the propagation of the plant species. This type of color signaling is called by ethologists an honest signal, in the sense that the bright color signals the presence of a healthy compound. And I would like to finish here and to thank you for your attention.